Thank you, Scott. As Scott mentioned, I've been tasked with moderating our next panel discussion, economic panel discussion, should you may. And I'd like to introduce our panelists of the day. Our first, Mr. Frank Howell, and I'll read a brief bio. Mr. Frank Howell became Executive Vice President of Delta Council on January 1st, 2019. However, he has been a major part of the Delta Council's work for a long time and served as the Director of the Council's Developmental Department from April 2002 until May 2017. As Director, he was responsible for the organization's regional economic and community development initiatives. Prior to serving as Director of the Development Department, he served for 7 years as Director of Public Affairs and Communications and for the Regional Economic and Agricultural Development Organization based in Stoneville. Frank graduated from the Macaulay School and Rhodes with a BA in Political Science. Thank you for being with us, Frank. Our next panelist I'd like to introduce, Ms. Danielle Morgan. Ms. Danielle Morgan became Executive Director of Mississippi Tourism Association in July of 2021. She is working with members, directors, and partners for further Mississippi Tourism Association's missions of uniting all sectors of the tourism industry, Mississippi's fourth largest industry, through advocacy, promotion, and education. Most recently, Danielle was Executive Director of Greenwood Convention and Visitors Bureau. Under her leadership, the Greenwood CVB increased tourism revenues by 24% over the last 5 years and won DMO of the Year for budgets under $500,000 in 2017, 2018, and 2020. A graduate of Delta State University, Morgan also has experience in advertising, public relations, graphic arts, and has also owned a restaurant. Thank you for being here, Ms. Morgan. Yeah, round of applause for her. Our next, Ms. Brandy Huff. Brandy Huff is the Director of Business Development for Harrison County Development Commission, HCDC. Her career passions are working with existing industry and workforce development. Prior to Huff's tenure at HCDC, she was a project manager for Mississippi Development Authority. Brandy was awarded a BS in Finance from the University of Southern Mississippi and an MBA from Belhaven University. In addition, she graduated from Oklahoma University Economic Development Institute and has practiced economic development for over 10 years. Thank you for being with us, Brandy. And last but not least, Mr. Jeff Good. Jeff Good is the president of Manjani Binet Restaurant and Management Group. I hope I said that okay. The owner and operator of Bravo Italian Restaurant Bar, Broad Street Baking Company, and Salamuki's New York Pizza and Ice Cream Joint. 3 unique and successful restaurants located in the city of Jackson, Mississippi. The restaurants operate a full-service catering business, Manjani Binet Catering, with partnerships in dozens of venues throughout the Metro Jackson area. He is the chair and founding board member of the Refill Jackson Initiative, a nonprofit work development program housed within a restaurant setting, Refill Cafe, located in West Jackson on the Jackson State University Parkway. Refill Jackson is a nonprofit workforce development program that provides job training, soft skill development, social service support, educational support, mentoring, and employment services. He received a degree in business administration from Millsaps College. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Chuck. So, let's get started. And my first question, Frank, I'd like to start with you. What are you seeing in terms of economic recovery, especially throughout the Delta area?
Jason?
I can hear
Okay,
you.
it's on. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Sorry about that. First of all, thank MEC for having us, and this is a great opportunity to highlight some of the things that are going on in our state. And as you look at economic recovery in the Delta, I think the last year and a half, whether you're talking anywhere in Mississippi or United States or the world, you've seen a tough environment in terms of management, and it doesn't matter whether you're a farmer or a restaurant owner or a plant manager or a healthcare official. The last year and a half, you've had to do a lot of things you never thought you'd find yourself doing, and it's been rewarding to a lot of sectors for those that have been able to navigate it. Some navigated it just fine, but outside forces still prevented a full recovery. But on the whole, we are seeing good recovery. Our sales tax collections are up throughout our communities over the last year and a half since the pandemic for a number of reasons that everybody knows and I won't get into. Manufacturing has remained strong and even growing in Northwest Mississippi. We've had the addition of Milwaukee Tool in Grenada, which corresponds with their large location in Greenwood. We've had other locations, existing business. We've had a lot of disruptions, but none that we hadn't been able to work through, especially around workforce training, which, whether you're in a pandemic or not, still remains a key issue for all of us who are trying to create a better economy. The Memphis MSA, the distribution continues its strength and growth, and agriculture has came into the year. Of course, agriculture is our largest economy in the Delta sector, and it came into the year with strong prices. We were all excited about that aspect. It's been a tough year, though. We had historic rainfall of 20 inches in June, which really set back almost 1 million acres of cropland in the Delta. And then, so it's still a tough harvest, especially up in the North Delta. It'll be very late this year. So what looked like a very bountiful year will end up not being quite as good as what we had our sights on earlier. And then we've had a situation with a bankruptcy that's really hitting a certain area of the Delta hard, both in terms of producers and the communities, and specifically the Greenwood community, that is very concerning. And I won't get into it because it's a federal bankruptcy case, but it is something that has set us on our heels. But overall, I think the Delta's economy is recovering. There's still losers in terms of the outside forces, whether they be supply chains or just certain industries are not doing as well. But on the whole, most of them are, and a lot of them have seized the opportunity.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm always passionate about the comings and goings in the Delta. I spent a lot of time growing up in the summertime. My mom is from the heart of the Mississippi Delta in Rolling Fork, so I always, it tugs on my heartstrings for the Delta, so I always supporting and praying for you guys that way. Next question, I'd like to move on to you, Danielle. We know tourism is a major economic driver here in Mississippi. How is the tourism industry faring presently?
Well, am I on? Okay.
Yes.
As the state's fourth largest industry, as you mentioned, everyone knows that tourism was the hardest hit industry throughout the pandemic. So I'm not going to harp on that because we all know that, but I do want to highlight a few positive things for Mississippi. In Mississippi, we saw a healthy amount of domestic leisure travel spring back this summer, which was very encouraging. It started to taper off in August as a result of the Delta variant and other factors, but very encouraging. And I believe that's due to a couple of factors. One was our state leadership's forward-thinking investment in the Tourism Recovery Fund, which we were one of the first in the country to implement. And that gave community destination marketing organizations the funding from the CARES Act funds to actually have a comprehensive promotion of their communities statewide. You may have seen the Visit Mississippi Responsibly campaign. We pumped all of that in pretty much in the fourth quarter of 2020, And so we are seeing the results of that still. In December of 2020, we were #1 in travel spending in the United States, which it was wonderful to be #1 and such a positive thing. So
Yeah, I think that deserves a round of applause. Yes, most definitely.
Absolutely. And, you know, the other portion of that was the Tourism's Promotion Act that the legislature passed a couple years ago. That is allowing us to be competitive for the first time in our state's history in tourism. And so those two things working together, from the bold and innovative community outreach to the state's investment and Visit Mississippi's promotion of Mississippi as a tourism destination, we are still, I'm happy to report, in the top 5 in travel spending in the state. And also, we're #3 in revenue per available room in the hotel industry. So these investments are paying off. We still obviously have a lot of work to do with international travel and business travel. We just held our largest conference here in Jackson. And it's possible to meet safely, so we just have to get back to business and start doing that again. One little downside, the industry analysts do say we're looking at 2024 before we return to 2019 levels. So there's still work to do, but there's a lot of positive going on in Mississippi, and it's an opportunity for us to not only recover, but to be a leader in the United States in tourism, and other states are modeling their efforts after ours. So it's really exciting.
Thank you so much, Danielle, and that's really positive to hear. I think a lot of times here in Mississippi, we need to do a better job of being our biggest advocates. We need to talk about our successes. Obviously, we're always mentioning our losses, but we need to always talk about our wins and be our biggest advocates here in Mississippi. So, moving right along, Brandy, from a business development perspective, is economic development activity beginning to pick up? And if so, what do you think is driving it?
Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. Things are picking up, and I have to admit that things never really slowed down during the pandemic for a number of our industries in Harrison County and along the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Because of the nature of the business with the Navy, the military, and the presence there, our manufacturers have gone nonstop through the whole pandemic and continue to do so to today. I will say that we've been seeing a number of activity increase, though, because of the supply disruption, and all of our companies are having to rely on our suppliers or other entities, and the suppliers are coming in and they are either expanding their operations or they are finding a new location. So that's one of the things that I think is driving, as well as we're getting a ton of requests for information and proposals for logistics and warehouse and distributions. We're seeing a big push for renewable energy. And I think the carbon footprints leading up to those projects for electric vehicles and energy vehicles and batteries and systems is a big push right now. Another thing that we're seeing is the increase in technology. So we're getting a lot of projects, high-paying jobs through the blue economy, and we're very excited about those things. And I know we'll talk about that a little later, hopefully.
Great. As economic development activity is the lifeblood of every community, so that's definitely great and positive news to hear. We'll head down to you, Jeff. As we know, the restaurant industry was one of the hardest hit. What do you do to adapt, and how are things faring today?
Well, thank you for asking, Jason. First of all, it's nice to be in adult clothes today. I haven't worn a tie in so long. And it's very nice to be in Commissioner Gibson's house here. This is looking beautiful, and we're looking forward to Mistletoe Marketplace next week. So this facility is amazing. March the 19th of 2020 was the hardest day of my life. I sent out a letter to 184 human beings, and I terminated them. In our business, in the restaurant business, we are a margin-thin business. There is no cash in the bank when you're a restaurant. It is day to day. We are able to make a great living for ourselves when everything works, but there's no reserves. So that's why you saw during the Great Shutdown such a shedding of employees from our industry, because if there's not a dollar coming in the front door, there was no way to sustain employees on payroll. So I worked very, very hard to become a professional prior to that moment, to know exactly what the unemployment opportunities were to feed that information to our employees and then to immediately figure out where we're going to go. Depression's real. Stress is real. There was a tremendous amount of disruption for everyone on my staff and myself personally. My wife and I immediately canceled all of our streaming services and anything that was extra because we did not know what was going to happen. And the good story is this. It started with David Roberts, the owner of Roberts Grocery Corner Market, calling me 4 days into the pandemic and saying, Jeff, we have no bread in our grocery stores. You have a bakery. Would you be willing or interested? And from that moment, I was able to call 2 of our bakers, and I met them on the back dock with masks, and I handed them to them, and I said, let's see if we can make something happen. And we started baking some bread that in turn had to be sliced and bagged and delivered. So we were able to get a couple extra people to come help us. And through the course of a week to 2 weeks, we were able to get up to about 300-400 loaves a day, fulfilling the 5 corner markets here in this market. And then we were able to start curbside delivery with meals. We got a small group in because it started with the banks and some of the energy and Atmos and groups like that wanting to buy meals for their employees and also for first responders, and so we're able to bring a cadre in to start making food. And once we were in the restaurant, we were able to start then providing meals to the public by doing curbside and doing takeout. And then as we started moving through the original pause and the opening at 50%, we were able to slowly start adding people on. I tell you the background, because the background influences the future. So first of all, I just want to say that if not but for the federal stimulus, if not but for PPP, I wouldn't be on this stage. I would be right now at work somewhere, earning a living, doing something, because I would not have been able to sustain the restaurants. If it wasn't for the Paycheck Protection Program, I don't know a single restaurant that would have made it through it. So because of that, I was able to hire everyone back, and I hired everyone back at 20% more than they made when they were terminated, because that was the just thing to do. The money was there, and that was a way to make up for the disruption that happened. It also was my ability to market and to ask people to come back, because I'm asking them to come work against a virus we don't understand, wear a mask and hope we don't get sick, and by the way, we're going to serve the public. And you know, what I learned is that human beings want to work, and they want relevancy, and they want to belong to part of a family. So fast forward. Y'all stop coming out to eat. You're too many. There's too many of you. We are struggling in our industry every day to be able to fulfill the demand that you blessedly are giving us. Be patient with us. We are trying to do everything we can, but we're dealing with the reality that it is in our industry, a very thin layer of human beings that wish to re-engage with our industry. A lot of veterans during the Great Pause chose different careers. They went back to school, they started the side gig, they did something with art or technology, and God bless them because they're moving forward with their lives. We're readjusting and we're finding new ways to engage employees, and we're doing everything we can, and we're very thankful. Last thing, yes, chicken wings are super expensive. A case of chicken wings, 40 pounds, was $40. A year ago, it is $165 this week. So when the Salad Mookies, it says market price, we're not kidding you. It's expensive.
Well, before we move on, I definitely don't want to gloss over your statement from saying that you rehired everyone, that you had to terminate, and you gave them a 20% increase. I think that deserves a round of applause. Please. That is wonderful. And to piggyback on that, Danielle, we know workforce, obviously, as Jeff mentioned, there are issues within the restaurant industry. What are you seeing in the tourism sector overall?
Well, you know, it's tough. We made it through the pandemic, and now we have no labor. So nationwide, leisure and hospitality jobs are falling about 10% where they were pre-pandemic. So that's pretty significant, 1.6 million jobs in the United States. Here in Mississippi, we're a little over 7% below pre-pandemic levels, so faring better than the nation again, but still pretty significant loss for people like Jeff. So 1 in 5 of the 10 million job openings are in the leisure and hospitality sector alone. So it is tough. Another thing, as Jeff mentioned, we've seen hourly earnings of leisure and hospitality workers have increased rapidly, reaching 13.2% above 2019 levels. So, however, we're still seeing that loss. So it's not just about pay. We're seeing that there's other factors. We're seeing a dramatic shift in workforce triggered by changes in priorities and values, and we've got to figure out how to solve those problems, and those are big problems for us. But consumer sentiment does show that it is affecting service in the tourism industry too. So that's a challenge. We're bringing the visitors into Mississippi, but we've got to be able to serve them and make sure they have a great experience so we can get them back. One of Mississippi's greatest qualities is repeat visitors. Once we get them here, we have them forever, and so we want to continue that legacy. But it's tough, but I know working together we're all going to figure out new and innovative ways. As Jeff mentioned, he's certainly an innovator in that aspect. So,
and to follow up, are you noticing any particular areas of the state that are facing additional challenges?
Well, I think there are parts of the state that struggle more with workforce prior to the pandemic, as you mentioned, Frank. So, I think those areas are suffering possibly a little more, but it is a statewide crisis and a nationwide crisis, as I mentioned. So it's certainly going on, but we're working towards ways. We're working with U.S. Travel on ways to how we shift that focus and recruit and retain workers. We know that there's an important piece of that puzzle that's deeper than pay. As we said, it's also quality of life, placemaking, community development. That's why it's so important we make those investments for not only tourism, but for keeping people in our state to work.
Thank you. And Brandy, moving along to you. Along the Gulf Coast, there has been a particular emphasis put on the blue economy. Tell us a little bit about what's happening there.
So the Blue Economy was launched this year, and I would be remiss if I did not recognize the University of Southern Mississippi, who has been the forefront for the Blue Economy. They are, with a concerted effort from federal agencies to all of our local state officials, all of our Gulf Coast communities are involved. We have a very diverse economic atmosphere on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, from fisheries to military to defense, and just adding on to that and expanding on that region with research and development projects. We're seeing a lot of food and safety, uncrewed systems, and technology, high-paying jobs come to the Mississippi Gulf Coast as a result of the Blue Economy. It's putting us on the map nationally. We're getting a lot of national press, a lot of requests coming in. We just landed Ocean Aero, which is a company that's moving from California that we're very excited about. They're high-paying jobs, and fulfilling those jobs are very challenging, but we feel pretty confident with the things that are in works that we can fulfill those jobs through the Blue Economy. But we're very excited, and the national press is just amazing.
Great. You mentioned research and development. So what role are research universities playing in helping with your current efforts?
So the University of Southern Mississippi is who we've been working closely with, but Mississippi State and some other entities are involved as well. And as we work forward to bring those projects, one thing that we've heard from one of the companies that we just did a request for proposal for is that Mississippi has their act together when it comes to the collaboration between the universities, the economic development of the state and the county. So we're very excited on that feedback that we did receive from a project.
That's great. That's great. Now, Jeff, outside of rehiring all of those terminated employees and giving them a 20% increase, what have you been most proud of your company that you guys have been able to accomplish over the last 18 months?
Thank you for asking that. I think that my story probably is no different than most of the leaders in this room. I have found that I have a parental responsibility to my team. There is a tremendous amount of stress, conflicted information, worry. There's navigation for funding for healthcare. We all know about the issues with the vaccine. I've done everything in my world to be able to be a calming and informative voice. I've tried to double down on my sensitivity to the needs, the soft needs of our employees. This is not the, I saw that Gordon Ramsay's come out with another TV show about 6 months ago, and I turned to my wife and I said, "What the hell is this?" This is the old school restaurant, yelling at people, you know, calling people names. This is a time for engagement, love, and support. So quite frankly, I did everything I could to provide, talk about the vaccine earlier, to provide information and opportunities. I did a number of different engagements within the four walls of our restaurants. I was very careful to make sure I was using representative health care. I worked with Jasmine Chapman at the Hinds County Comprehensive Health Center to make sure I had 2 African-American healthcare professionals work our restaurants. And then I had a very professional white female pharmacist come through a few weeks later to make sure that she could communicate with others in our group that might want to talk in a different way, and gave them private space to talk. And those engagements help move the needle a little bit. But more so, the interesting thing in closing is that when providing healthcare professionals in the workplace to have a conversation about the vaccine, some of our employees took that opportunity to have a private conversation with them about other healthcare needs or about navigation or wayfinding. And again, that informed me to how I need to really continue to work on providing information for those that meet the socioeconomic climate of who works in our restaurants.
So as recovery efforts continue, what do you see the opportunities for the food service industry, and where can you continue to grow?
Once the supply chain fixes itself and we're able to not worry about whether, when you come to Broad Street, the reason you don't know what kind of cup you're going to get is because we don't know what kind of cup we're going to get each day. So we're not trying to be cheap on the coffee. If it's a 16-ounce cup instead of 20, I'm sorry, it's what they came this week. And it costs us twice as much as well. We all have to hunker down and make it through this. And then the opportunity on the opposite side, I think, is for leaner operations that we can actually make money doing less because we've had to, because the top line revenue is still not there. We're thankful to have catering finally start coming back, because that's been a missing part for Binet, which is Italian for good eating. That has been a missing part. So it doesn't matter how many people come in the door or do takeout with us, we're still missing a slice of our revenue that isn't there. And so the overall load of our business is difficult. But what we're trying to do is just make it through and stay positive.
Well, we appreciate all that you do. And just a little inside, my kids were teasing me last night because I couldn't say Binet on call. But we'll get better. We'll get better. But back to you, Frank. Going forward, what is the one thing you think could have the most impact on the Delta region's economy, and why?
Well, Jason, I think I would say to this crowd what we say to people in the Delta, and that is, don't apologize for where we live and the opportunities we have. As I travel around the Delta, we've got world-class manufacturing in all of our communities, and we've got, Commissioner, an agricultural economy that is a marvel of modern ingenuity. Agriculture is not anything that anybody remembers as a kid or sees on the old TV shows. It is a modern business. During the pandemic, we saw people coming to the Delta for our healthcare opportunities. That was pretty special to see. And sometimes we can be our biggest critics, but if you can't come to the Delta and spend a weekend as a tourist and have a good time, then whoever was talking about the therapist earlier, they need to go see them, because just like the coast and Jackson and other areas of our state, we've got a lot of good things going on. So don't hold your head low. Don't be ashamed. We've started traveling again the last 6 months, 5 months, as we did before the pandemic. And there are a lot of problems out there in the world, y'all. There are a lot of challenges. So don't ever feel like in Mississippi we're burdened with an enormous amount of challenges. We do have them, but we can overcome them, and the people in this room are the ones that can do that. And so whether you're talking about the restaurant business, tourism, economic development, we can build this Mississippi and the Delta corollarily up, but don't apologize.
Thank you so much for saying that. We definitely appreciate all that you do, Frank. Appreciate all you guys. As we come to a conclusion, I want to give each of you just any final thoughts, give you this stage and this platform to make any final comments. I'll start with you, Brandy, and we'll move right along.
Sure, in closing, just one of the things that we're seeing too that I didn't mention earlier was a lot of the projects are wanting to move very quickly. So it's a pretty fast turnaround on all of these projects, and site visits that come up. Speed and sustainability is key in logistics. So that's one of the main things that we're seeing in the projects that are driving the after the pandemic.
Great. Danielle?
Thank you again, Jason, for having us here. We're really honored to have a seat at this table. And I'll just say we've made great strides. We've made great investments, but we've got to keep our foot on the gas and keep tourism thriving, because tourism will drive recovery for our state and our country. So we've got to continue pushing. I know we're all tired, Jeff, but we do have to continue pushing and moving forward. And I believe our brightest days are ahead.
I agree. Thank you so much, Danielle. Frank?
I just would like to say I hope people come see us in the Delta and go through other areas of the state and really learn what is going on. And we've got dynamic economies here. So.
And I'm going to leave you with a piece of advice that's going to make your life happier. Measure twice, cut once. When you pick up that to-go order from the restaurant, look in the bag and make sure everything is in there. We've got to ask you to take some personal responsibility on your order. We may forget that extra salad dressing. That cookie may be left out. Please, double check our work. We need your help, and stay off of Yelp.
I think that's a great way to conclude. Everybody, please join me in thanking our panelists today. They did a wonderful job. Thank you.